Ooh, it's official.
So let me tell you something before we get started. Just so you know, I'm 47 years old and dyslexic. This is
In
no,
that order? In that order?
no. I was dyslexic first, I think. There's something that happens in this piece, and not everyone on this call has seen a Huey P. Newton story, but they will. When you did a Huey P. Newton story, there was such an energy, a frenetic, frantic energy in that performance. And I said, like, I asked you, I said, do you smoke in real life? And you said no. I said, well, how did you do that and survive? But when I watch Rodney King, and for the first time I thought about this, because I personally am feeling so exhausted that when I watch Rodney King, I see an exhaustion. Am I right?
Well, physically, you're absolutely right, and emotionally, you're right as well. It was the hottest night that summer in New York City, which is where we filmed it.
Mhm.
I did it in one take. There were no retakes. What you saw was straight off the dome, free flow, and Spike captured it. Fortunately, there was a film in the camera, and there was supposed to have been a big thunderstorm that night, but we got passed over, and there was a beautiful rainbow right before the sunset. And what you saw coming out of my forehead was not somebody coming in and spraying me. It was real. And in terms of the emotion, yeah, I mean, this piece goes into a very deep trauma. And it's a trauma not just of one man, but I think of an entire community, of an entire nation, if you will, which expressed itself through not only that evening, March 3rd, 1991, when Rodney King was beaten, but certainly through what happened the next year and continues to happen across the nation tragically. Um, I'm sure you noticed at the end of Rodney's speech, at the end of the piece, that Rodney says, "I can't breathe." Well, I had put that in there in commemoration of Eric Garner, who was choked to death by the NYPD in Staten Island. But little did I know that "I can't breathe" would become kind of a new mantra for America, and that it would be played out in such a tragic way continuously, and obviously most prominently in the execution of my brother Floyd in Minneapolis on appropriately, tragically, Memorial Day of this year. So yeah, it's an exhausting piece, but it's an exhausting process, and it's an exhausting democracy.
I'd push back on you with that, even though that seems like a horrible thing for me to do right now, and say, with the heat and the storm didn't come and the rainbow, you didn't know that you knew, but in your bones, you knew I can't breathe, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had to grant myself permission, of course,
Yeah,
to go there, but
right.
it seemed appropriate. We were in New York,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact, I had done a little run of Rodney King in Brooklyn
Mm-hmm.
uh, in December uh, of what year was that? Uh, it would have been 14,
Yeah.
when Officer Pantaleo
Yep.
was deemed, you know, unindictable for the choking of Eric Garner. And we had a performance sold out. In fact, they had to put monitors in the lobby of the theater. And after the show, we had what was called an emergency town hall meeting where there was very good conversation. But then we didn't feel that that was enough. So spontaneously, all of the people in the theater and in the lobby marched out into the street for, a peaceful demonstration, a disciplined demonstration. And it was a beautiful, dynamic flow of art into activism. So it seemed appropriate when we went outside with the show that I would link the Staten Island moment with the LA moment.
So let me introduce you to someone I missed, Lila Kamal. Lila Kamal is coming to us today from London, and she is a tremendous Weidman scholar. And we were very excited to have her on board and working with us on all the things we do. And here's how funny things are, Roger. She came to America, went to New York, interviewed John, came to Pittsburgh, wanted to talk to some of the Weidman people around here. She said, Norm, can I meet with you on this day? I'm sure people remember the day. I said, no, I can't meet with you. We're going to Harrisburg for a commutation hearing on Robert Farouk Weidman. Why don't you just come with us? Right. So she went from studying Roger Weidman or John Weidman's work and reading things like Brothers and Keepers. She went through the looking glass and she's in the story now. So everything you're talking about the way these miracles happen in these malignant moments. And that's a good segue to, as you can see, my man, my old head, Farouk is sitting there. Farouk, do you have anything to say to, and Big Lou? These are the two of the most thorough brothers in Pittsburgh. You got anything for Roger? You have to unmute yourself. You got to unmute yourself, buddy.
Let's go to the lower left and hit the unmute.
There it is. I got it. Well, I just want to say how glad I am to meet you. I've, watched you in films, and watching that today, just took me back to that time and how it sort of started this place where we're at right now. Definitely it didn't start it because, it started when I was a kid, but the regeneration of it kind of began then. People want to take it a little closer to now, but it really began then. And, I remember that time because I was actually still in prison, in the hole, and I was begging for information about what was going on, and I was getting little bits and pieces of everything that was happening on TV, and so it was a real exciting but miserable moment for me because, first of all, my own personal situation, and then what was going on, I couldn't reach to it. I couldn't, I later watched many things about it, but when it was actually happening, it was on TV every day and the riots and all those things, I missed it. So it has it has a certain thing to me. It was a piece of the world that I kind of missed because I was locked up, and it was the last time that I was locked up. And it was a life-changing moment for me that I won't get into, but so I remember that time real well. And the piece that you did, was just so interesting to hear you saying his name. It seemed like Rodney was in every other sentence, and I could only, that just jumped out to me constantly. And the looks on your face of almost terror and pain and panic that you added to it. I really enjoyed sitting there watching it in the car. I was hoping I could catch it because, as Norm said, we're supposed to be doing food. We're waiting on the drop off now. So if we have to go, you'll know that's where we went. We went to, try to help some people. We deliver to senior high rises. We deliver to different three-quarter houses, which are like halfway houses, but not quite. We even go to the corner where the crackheads and the dopeheads hang out and tell the sisters, hey, listen, call your kids, tell them to get down here and get these boxes because we know them kids is hungry because they mamas and daddies is out here chasing this crap. But, I know what it's like to be a hungry kid. So, we thinking about them too. So but it's just so good to see you do this. Just so good
To meet you, and thank you for your service, for your continued service. I'm glad that, I was able to open up a window for you that was closed in that moment. And how wonderful to meet and greet at this particular moment.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Right next to him, you'll see the aspiring playwright, my man, Big Lou. He's got an idea for a play called Grandma Jenkins. About the role that the women played in the community of Homewood when he was a young man. Lou, you got anything for the man?
Ain't no doubt. Like the brother said, I appreciated seeing your piece and how you kicked it, because that in itself gave me some thoughts and ideas about maybe something that I could do with some of my pieces. You know what I mean? So I was learning as you was kicking it and then trying to relate it at the same time. But the reason why Grandma Jenkins was so important is because it was a place and time that the whole community came together. And it actually made a unity move, like the teaching from the older folks and the younger folks, and we was blending and rolling with it. And I don't know whether there's been love like that on the planet, but so many times, other than maybe what we're involved in with the think tank and everything. But we looking at how you did that and thinking about the whole piece, then the creative juices got to coming up, because sometimes we say, if you throw us in an empty room and give us a microphone, then we can come up with something. You know what I mean? So thank you for your piece, your story. I'm glad I got a chance to meet you, and hopefully we'll be our paths will travel. I mean, our paths will cross again. You know what I mean? That's what I hope in my heart. So
That's a
thank
plan.
you again. Thank you, Norm.
Thank you, Lou.
So I'll point out also that you're looking at right there 70 years of incarceration total between those men who never really hurt anybody, right? And when you add
like 80.
Because you got, you're right, because you got 44, he's got 36, 80 years. 80 years of incarceration. And when you add Yusuf, that's well over 100. And these men are writers. These men are, I know Lou is a performer, Farouk's a performer in his own way. He was actually in the actual Greek theater when the Greek theater existed. with all we have a long standing tradition of that joke. I'm gonna tell you go ahead, what?
You know what I wanted to make sure I put an emphasis on, though? Grandma Jenkins wasn't just one person. Grandma Jenkins, you did was the flavor of the women, and it needed to be talked about, and the women need to be given their proper, just like the men do. So it was important when all this stuff was jumping off and in the jails and the gangs was getting ready to come in Homewood, where I'm talking about now. And I kicked the story about their mothers and their grandmamas and their aunts, so they would have something else you did to grip a hold of, you did in real life. And then I wanted to tell the story because ain't nobody said nothing about it. In other words, remembering folks. We don't remember folks. We don't write our, you know what I mean? So That's where I was coming from, man. I want to make sure that.
I got to say one thing because she's about to leave. One of my favorite students, because she has such a hard head, in the private chat said, "Holy shit, that's him." I've been telling these students for a week, and she's just surprised that this man is here. I don't know if she was talking about Big Lou or Roger, but I don't see Seth on this screen. I don't know if he's still here. He might have had to go. But Roger, I'd also, let me see if I see him. Yeah, Yusuf, man. This is your chance.
Well, I don't come to the table with no directorial debuts or nothing like that. But for me, I would be more interested in how the community and larger society is receiving the pieces. I'm specifically interested in the Huey P. Newton piece. You know, I come through those years and put work in on the same level, and ended up with the same experiences. So for me, I would be more inclined to get a report from you how your work is being received, given the sensitive nature of it, given the investment that you put in it in terms of your passion, as well as your perspective. See, it's the perspective that you bring to this thing that animates it and gives it the life. And I'm wondering how is that being received, especially in your community. And I'm speaking more so of your professional community than I am the larger audience at this point. Because one of the things I've witnessed or seen on the rise is the demand for Black content. I mean, you know, it's just an insatiable appetite for insightful pieces about the Black experience. And I'm wondering, you know, how is this landed in your professional community?
Well, you know, it's been a long, long journey. And Huey and Rodney King are two of the pieces that fortunately have been documented. But there are many, many other pieces which I've done which haven't received the kind of accolades because they haven't received the exposure. Now, there's a piece that I did actually at the August Wilson Center in Pittsburgh called Juan and John, which is a baseball-inspired play about Juan Marichal and John Roseboro, two great ball players who had the most notorious fight in professional baseball history. Marichal hit John Roseboro upside the head with a bat. And these are two Black men with the same name, basically, Juan and John, one brother from Ohio, another brother from the Dominican Republic. They didn't talk to each other for 10 years, but then they became great friends. Marichal went to the Hall of Fame, rightfully so, because John Roseboro stood up for him, said, "I forgive him, y'all need to forgive him." And John Roseboro passed. Juan Marichal was his pallbearer, honorary pallbearer at the service, and said that the greatest thing that happened in my life was John Roseboro forgiving me. It's a beautiful biblical story about brothers. And, you know, that's a story, one of the stories that I've told. I've also continued to do a piece on Frederick Douglass, who is a man about which we should know a whole bunch more than we do. I also did a piece on Christopher Columbus, because people wanted to celebrate the 500th anniversary of his alleged discovery of America. And I said, okay, I'll come out and I'll play Christopher Columbus as a lounge entertainer who has political aspirations, who runs a travel agency on the side, and he promises a song, a dance, and a magic trick. And the magic trick that he promises is that he will be transformed before your very eyes into a Black man. And he is indeed transformed into a Black man by getting the same 56 blows that Rodney King got, applied electronically by my DJ, Mark Anthony Thompson. Okay? So at the end of the piece, Columbus is stripped down to his boxer shorts and his big gold chain in the spotlight of the LAPD helicopter. And he is devoured by an imaginary polar bear. And we got this idea because there was a kid named Juan Perez who, on a dare, jumped into the polar bear cage in New York City and was eaten by the polar bear. And the next day on the tabloids, there was a picture of his body, and the big headline said, "Help, mommy, they're biting me hard." And I always felt that this was indicative of the way that urban youth were treated during the Reagan era, right? So what Mark Anthony Thompson did in order to portray the polar bear, he took the speech of Ronald Reagan at the 1992 Republican National Convention, where he said, "In America, it's not history that matters as much as our destination." And he slowed the voice down so that it became a growl. So we hear the growl of Ronald Reagan. And then my man jumps down off the DJ stand, snatches Christopher Columbus's gold chain off his neck, and runs out of the theater. So these are the kinds of things that we're doing using imagination, combining it with history, of course, and performance and music and all of that. That's what I do. And it's been, well received by the community critically.
Okay.
And my peers have shown much love all along the way. So, simultaneously, I've been able to work with my man, Spike Lee. I've worked with Spike more than any other actor. We've done 10 films together with a long range of characters that I've played with Spike. And so I've been blessed, truly blessed to be able to maintain independence on the stage and on the screen as well, and to be in collaboration with people like Mark Anthony Thompson and certainly Spike Lee.
You get any pushback from, the detractors? Because you bring in an interesting perspective. You weave in your political assessments into the pieces and whatnot, and that adds a very unique flavor. And so that's why I'm wondering, in terms of, in addition to the acclaim, your detractors, because I'm trying to see how that would land.
Of course there are detractors. I mean, you know how to pronounce Schwarzenegger, right?
Yes, indeed.
But most people don't know how to pronounce Guenveur. That's my name.
Yes.
So, we've seen, the Arnolds of the world ascend to the governorship of California.
Yes.
This is a man who came out with a gun on a billboard, called himself the Terminator. And before you know it, he's in the governor's chair in California. You've got another man who's running a reality show, okay? And now he's sitting up in a place saying, "Yo, look at me, I'm here, y'all are not. I'm here, y'all are not." Where was he speaking? On the White House lawn. So that's cool, because that's the process. You see, Hollywood is connected to DC, and DC is connected to Jamestown, 1619. Or if you want to roll it back even deeper, we can go to 1492. And that's why I did Columbus.
Yeah, interesting. I appreciate your work. I mean, I just want to let you know that the fact that you can weave it in like that so creatively, and watching any of it is going to be an explosion mentally, because it's going to provoke thinking in ways that people generally don't think about. So I thank you.
I thank you. There was a great poet from Pittsburgh, PA, who kept submitting poetry and plays and got rejected left and right and right and left. And finally, he got accepted. And before you know it, he's our greatest playwright. and
Yes.
knocked down the entire 20th century poetically and theatrically. A man by the name of, you know
August
who I'm
Wilson.
talking about,
I
August
know.
Wilson.
August Wilson.
Okay,
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
peerless. But you know, he had kickback. He had kickback in the early days, but he was on a mission, right? I'm going to give you 10 decades of truth, and he did it. Then he
Mm.
stepped off the planet and said, "Okay, your turn now." And August actually came to see me play Huey Newton in Seattle, and he came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, did you write that?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Here, keep writing," and he handed me his pen. So I never
Mm.
knew if he meant keep writing or keep writing, but I take it on the positive. You know,
Wow.
Yeah.
I'd like to sit with that, but we got to keep rolling because I want to get to the other side of the badge. But before we do that, my very, very good friend Susan Stein is here. And Susan Stein is a contemporary of yours. She does, I don't know if that's what you call a fellow performer of what you do, but
yeah.
she took a book. Well, why don't you tell them what you do? But before you do that, I'll say that when I said that you knew I Can't Breathe had to be in there and you knew it would come in your bones, whether you knew it or you didn't know it, right? I learned stuff like that, to think stuff like that way about writing and performing from Susan, right? And Susan, tell them who you are and what you do, and just let them know you for a minute.
Roger, great to meet you. It's a privilege. When Norm wanted me to watch both the films, and after I watched the first one, I wrote him the next day and said, "It's going to take me a while. I'm still crying." So wow, what powerful work. So thank you for that. I've spent the last 14 years kind of living in the diaries of a woman, a Dutch woman, Etty Hillesum, who started a diary because she was dealing with depression, struggling with that in 1941, when the Nazis have occupied Germany. And she's imprisoned and eventually murdered. But as she's keeping these diaries and writing letters, her inner universe is getting larger, and she refuses to see herself as a victim, and it feels like a bigger project than I am. And the project has it just continues to get larger and larger. The director's Austin Pendleton, someone you probably know, and he's been a great gift in it. And it started going to prisons about 8 years ago. And it was in the prisons that I really learned that it's a prison story. So Austin has me just talk. I just use her words. They're only her words, but they've been collaged into the shape that they're in. And so it's a conversation with the audience. And recently I've had the conversation with Yusef, who had great insight and watched kind of this remote film version we're making of one of the performances. And he said, she reaches out and becomes a friend. So I think that's maybe what the piece is that she invites us into parts of ourselves, to look at our hate and try to root it out. Anyway, that's me.
Roger, a little bit before I know you got something to do, just so you know, I met Susan. She came to Pittsburgh. The Jewish Studies Department brought her to do a Crystal Knock presentation of Etty. And she also likes to do it in prison. And I'm the prison guy around here. So they said, "You don't know this woman. You don't know anything about this. Will you take this into the prison and let her do it?" I said, "Of course." And it happened to be a time when John Weidman was in town. And I said, "John, do you want to go into the prison and sit next to your brother and watch a play?" Right? And this, I feel, maybe I can't feel the same way about John as you do, but I feel as much as I can about his work. Believe it or not, his work is all about me to me. So I took Susan in. John was there. Him and Farouk were sitting next to each other, and you'll both hate and love this. The guards would not allow them to sit directly next to each other because they are brothers, right? These are men, you know, of their age who weren't. This was only a few years ago, right? Who weren't. There was no reason. So what they did was they were kind of blocked. There was one block where the incarcerated men sat, and one block where the staff and the outsiders sat, and they sat directly across from each other, and each of them put one foot into the aisle to be that close to each other. And to witness that, and to witness Susan do this thing, and I hope that you can somehow watch, maybe she can share it with you or something. I hope you can see what she does, because your pieces, we talk a little bit, are so much about violence, right? And I'm interested, there's a violence in John's work that really intrigues me. And I think all this stuff somehow cosmically fits together. So I know you wanted to say things. I'm sorry, I should shut up.
No. It's all connected. Let me tell you a couple of things to connect us. Farouk, I know your brother, and I don't know if you know this, but I actually read Writing to Save a Life on tape. I was the voice.
Oh.
And
No, I didn't.
I have read your brother's work in public many times, and a couple of times he's been in the audience. And of course, it's always an extraordinary experience. I don't have to tell you to be in the presence of that man. And another connection is that my latest piece is called Otto Frank, inspired by the father of diarist Anne Frank, who of course wrote her diary in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. And Otto Frank was the only survivor of his immediate family. He lost his 2 daughters and wife to the Nazi death camps, but he lived a long and very productive life until 1980, actually. He lived to be 91 years old. And my newest solo piece is inspired by him. It doesn't live only in the 1940s, as none of my work lives only in, the particular time. I don't, want to deal strictly with nostalgia or so-called history. I'm always trying to bring it into the present moment. And I think that, certainly Otto's experience has a lot to say to our present moment. So we're all connected.
Susan's going to need to sit with that for a while if I know Susan, and I think I do. And I want to tell you something. I'm hopeful for further collaboration or something about this mess we're in, and I think art is important to it. And I hope you get to be around Farouk, because I'll tell you, being in his presence, and I spent a lot of time with John in my life, being in Farouk's presence is 10 times more powerful than being in John's. So I hope you get the chance.
I have in the last 20 minutes, and I'm grateful for it.
Good.
For making it happen, John. Again,
let's shift to
this might sound patronizing, but watching you talk in the film we just watched, it just had, I told you, the looks on your face had as much connection with me as the words that you said. And I wasn't sure what it was. I tried to explain it when I talked to you. It was something about those looks. Look like, my old best friend who's dead now, a guy named Bootsy, who you look like.
Bootsy?
And, yeah, Bootsy.
I had an aunt named Bootsy and a cousin named Bootsy.
Oh, no.
So, there you go.
Okay. See, it's all connected. Like
it's all connected. Look, I would like to think that the piece could work silently as well as with all of those words as well. I think that silence is important. I think that stillness is important. I obviously like to move, you know, I like to talk, but I think that we can break down the movement, we can break down the talk and go straight to silence and go straight to stillness and say everything that we need to say. Yeah.
Absolutely. I believe that.
I'm glad it hit you like that.
I have to confess to some real stupidity, but it's also a huge compliment. My friend Colleen is here. I thought she was one of my students because her name's not showing up. I swear to God. So let me introduce you to these two women, Tiffany and Colleen. They're both police. They're both sergeants in the police department. And some years ago, when I explain what police training inside out is to you, I looked for people to come and try this thing with 6 guys in prison. Farouk was one of them. And these are the 2 of the women with the courage to do that. You know, it's very public. Colleen was a victim of a terrible, terrible act of violence in her career as a police officer, and she still looks young enough to be one of my students. Tiffany is a dance major from Oberlin who became a police officer, and maybe it'd be interesting for them to say anything they have to say, because to me, Rodney King and this kind of thing is important because I want police to be able to do this, to write, to tell their stories. Susan Stein is the one who runs the writing group with the guys every Monday morning. They get together and they write, and it's amazing. I've enjoyed so many of them, but I got busy after the world went crazy. Can't go anymore. So I want to create a writing group with police, with Susan, and I want to have them talking to you and doing something like Rodney King. And you bring these guys, that's only 3 of the guys there. There's at least 6, 10 of the guys. So if you say to the police, look, police are suffering, right? I'm a sociologist who comes at this as police respond to problems, police cause problems, and police suffer from problems, just like everyone else. Now, it's a lot of other things happening at the same time, but here you have in front of you 2 of a lot of really good officers that I know. And I'd like to think about how writing and performing can be therapeutic for officers, and because these guys will tell you, and how having people understand what it's like for them might help all of us. So I'll start with Colleen, because Colleen, she's the one that takes me with her into the police academy, and I always get her in trouble. So here she is.
I just want to say thank you. I wondered if you ever thought that your work would be shown in a police academy. I wonder what your thoughts were on that. I must say, every time I've watched this, and I've watched you multiple times now, it's still like I still have the ball in my throat right now. It gives me an anxiety, but it's a good thing. Every single time it causes for so much self-reflection, and it causes for so much reflection within our training standards and what we're doing in Pittsburgh. So I just want to thank you for that. And I'm just curious if, how you feel about it being shown to police recruits and what your thoughts are on that. And thank you, Norm, for setting this up.
Colleen, when I realized that was you, I felt so stupid and so happy at the same time, which should be the title of my biography, but go ahead.
I had to keep my video off because I have potty training kids and going on in the background. I was sparing you all from that.
All right, go ahead, Roger.
Hey kids. How do I feel about it being played in an academy? Well, when Rodney King passed, it was Father's Day, June 2012, the then chief of police made a remark and said that Rodney King had changed the culture of policing in Los Angeles, which I thought was a very inappropriate comment. For one thing, there was no remark of condolence to Mr. King's family in terms of his loss. And it also placed Rodney King in that strange, inhuman position of being simply the symbol of something or the catalyst for something. And I think the great challenge of my work is to rehumanize Rodney King, who was seen as the butt of a joke, as a human piñata, the symbol of police brutality, the symbol of drunk driving, if you will. So if there is a process of rehumanization that your cadets in the academy can access, then I'm certainly happy to share with them this piece, which I've shared with the entire world. But hopefully they will be able to see it with fresh eyes, and hopefully it will illuminate the humanity that is on the street. And this is something that we seem to struggle with because the institutions in this country, in order to denigrate a certain demographic, to put Black people down, must first dehumanize Black people. And this is a process that's been going on in this hemisphere, as I remarked, since 1492, 1619, 1865, 1917, 1919. Name any year. You know, this is part of the American process, the dehumanization of Black folks. So if this can help in that very simple but very crucial, very essential process, then I'm certainly happy to make that contribution. So thank you for pushing the play button.
A couple points there. I reviewed Writing to Save a Life for the Post-Gazette in town, and I never listened to the audiobooks, but I read it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And I always think of this work as writing to save a life, or whatever we're doing, teaching to save a life, learning to save a life. And Colleen's commitment into it is huge. And you'll appreciate that they have certain weeks set aside for certain things in the police academy. One might be like evasive driving techniques or whatever. I'm probably saying the wrong thing, but Colleen has, the guys call it, the more traditional officers call it Colleen's liberal bullshit week. And that's when you and I fit in, Roger. So I'm pleased that we can be there in the academy together. Speaking of liberal bullshit, here is Sergeant Tiffany Klein Costa.
What a segue, Norm. Appreciate you. I feel like I'm a little bit like Susan, and that I'm gonna reel for a little bit while I process. That's the first time, Roger, I've seen that piece, and the intensity of emotion, and the humanity that you gave to Rodney King. I mean, that's what my first thought was while watching. You kind of gave us perspective on his life, like the reality of him as a man. And yeah, I think part of Colleen's liberal bullshit should be focusing on humanity and throughout the academy. I think that's kind of what policing is lacking, is the fact that we all forget that we're all humans and we're all on the same team trying to have better lives and live in a better place. So,
And police end up dehumanized.
Police do end up dehumanized, but police do a lot of dehumanizing also. Not gonna lie about that. So yeah, I feel like I'm in the presence of greatness, and
Well,
And
thank you, Tiffany.
yes, Norm, absolutely. And anytime I get to see Farouk is a good day for me. So yeah. So thank you so much for speaking with us, Roger, and sharing your work with us. And I can't wait to see what's next. It's powerful.
Thank you. Otto Frank is the next piece, and Frank's father.
I can't wait.
If you two want to run these ideas up the chain, we'll see what we can get going. I think we can do a lot. I think that goes for you too, Susan. It's a different chain that you run things up, but going up to my top corner, it's my friend Poppy, who was a prosecutor, and her husband, who was a police officer. I'm sorry, because I have an active wife, and I try to always include her. I have to bring couples in.
My retired police officer husband just moved himself out of the screen. Somehow he can testify in federal court, a million times, but is embarrassed to be in front of a small Zoom group or borrow sugar from a neighbor. So there you go. Make of that what you will. Yeah, that was pretty amazing. I will say we had a little trouble hearing all of the words as it was coming through, and it didn't seem to stop either of us from feeling incredibly moved and shaken by the performance.
Thank you. I think you can tune back into, if you want to watch it again, you can tune back into Netflix.
Yeah, Norm gave me his password, so I'll steal
It's still streaming on Netflix, and I think that they're actually letting people watch for free these days.
That's right. We were stealing your work by using my account twice, but I'm sure you forgive us.
I'll look for the check next week.
That's what people like me do.
How can I watch the other the other one on Huey? Because I wasn't able to find that one.
I think you can get it delivered to your house. It should be in your library, and there are versions on YouTube as well. But I should say that there's a Bob Dylan song that we used, and the Bob Dylan Association removed that part of the play. But it's on YouTube. Just imagine that you're listening to Ballad of a Thin Man.
I also wanted to say, I came in late because I was coming from a meeting, but the performance, the way your breath, the spaces, your sweat, how we moved through your body, how you brought us, it was a performance on a whole, I don't even like using the word performance. It was theater on a whole other level that felt profound. And I can appreciate what Poppy just said, that you didn't even need the words, because at a certain point, I was breathing with you. And that's where you brought me. I wanted to turn it off because I felt like I couldn't stay in it. It felt unbearable, and I couldn't. I was in and just kept breathing.
Yeah. Well, thanks for breathing along with all of us. And it's not just Rodney King in this piece. It's really a cast of a dozen or so people whose lives we get glimpses of. Latasha Harlins, of course, this girl who was killed over $1.79 bottle of orange juice. A great, great tragedy. And in fact, a tragedy which probably inspired the insurrection, if you will, more than the beating of Rodney King and the acquitting of the officers who beat him, Officers Kuhn, Powell, Racino, and Wind. Because Latasha Harlins, of course, was killed. she was killed in South Los Angeles. Rodney King was beaten outside of the city. And he was not a South Los Angeles resident. He lived in a place called Altadena, which is a kind of suburban ghetto with horses. It's a strange little place adjacent to Pasadena. So the story of Latasha Harlins is a compelling one. Brenda Stevenson, who's chair of the history department at UCLA, has written an amazing book talking about the life and times of Latasha Harlins, and also of the woman who killed her, Korean woman, Sun Jadu, and also of Judge Carlin, who made the ruling that gave Sun Jadu no time whatsoever. So very interesting book, which is worth looking up. Brenda Stevenson is the author, great historian at UCLA. So breathing, yeah, and then to come to the conclusion, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. It is very much about breath. Yeah.
Before I forget, I want to say, I don't know if we might have talked about this, Roger, I'm not sure, but I was a freshman at the University of Pittsburgh when the Rodney King verdict came out. I was home that night watching the Cosby Show, and when it was over, they cut right to the riots. And I'm from a little town called Newcastle. It's frequently ranked as the worst town in Pennsylvania. You know, I was one of those guys from Newcastle, and I came to Pittsburgh, and it was like New York City to me. It was so amazing, right? And I started seeing the world a little differently. I started looking at people a little differently. That Rodney King changed my life, right? In that moment, and from Rodney King to all the way through, and my work with policing, right? To here, so it's this connection with all this and these police and these guys is amazing to me. It is all connected, and I want to ask you, when you count the characters in the piece and you say there's maybe 12, are you counting Bob Marley and Smiley?
Bob Marley and Smiley?
Yeah.
From Do the Right Thing?
Right.
I don't know if Smiley's in it, but Bob is definitely in it. And it is true that Rodney King went trick-or-treating with a red, green, and gold tam with dreadlocks attached on it. He went trick-or-treating as Bob Marley. And that's the disguise that he wore when he drove straight into the middle of the thing. Now, I don't know if he was listening to Burning and Looting when he was on his way down the freeway. I took a little poetic license there, but that's definitely what he did, which is absurd and
You knew Bob.
funny and crazy.
You knew Bob.
I met him.
Yeah.
I met him on a couple of occasions. I was photographed with him. You might have seen that. And I did a piece called Who Killed Bob Marley? I got to go to Kingston when I was a student. And I walked, the boldness of youth will, just send you walking straight into Bob Marley's studio where he's recording a song called Africa Unite. And I just sat there and checked it out. And I've been checking out Bob ever since.
And I'll point out that I'm only a sociologist because I didn't have the guts to be a theater critic. And I'll also say that Smiley was there because when you say Malcolm X, you go, Mama Malcolm. So
yeah, I think I threw a little something in there.
There you go. So
just for you, Norm. Just for you.
So that was the music. Okay, so let's go to.
Could I ask a quick question of Roger? Roger,
constantly. Here he is.
Hey, Stephen.
If only, yes.
Hey.
I'm just wondering, having with my having spent a lot of time with August Wilson's work,
Yes.
if you ever either worked with him or was in any of his plays.
You know, I've never done an August Wilson play.
Really?
Really, I have never had the pleasure. But you know, there's lots more to go.
Yeah.
There's lots more to go.
Well,
But
maybe that'll happen some point.
knock on wood, it will.
Yeah.
You know, right place,
Thank
right. Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm really looking forward to seeing Chadwick Boseman in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Yeah.
That's of course the last piece that he did. It's in the can, and you know, Chadwick wrote a beautiful article some years ago in 2013, actually, about his encounters with August Wilson. And at the end of the article, you know, he noted that August Wilson was not doing well physically, but at that point he had done his 10 plays. And how odd it is now to think that the final piece that we will see Chadwick in is August's first play. It's a strange and moving and in a way inspiring story. I worked with Chadwick on the Thurgood Marshall film. Yeah.
One more quick question, and this is for Susan. Susan, is Eddie streaming anywhere? Can it be seen on video somewhere?
We're actually, there's a filmmaker who's been taking a filmed performance that was actually filmed 5 days after the massacre in Charleston, in Trenton, New Jersey, that particular performance, and turning it into kind of a filmed version that will be available. And it should be ready in about a month. I'll let you know. Yeah, so, but it's not the full play, and it's not the experience of you know, when I'm there, but, and it's not, I don't become other people. So it's more that we just share her sensibility. It's kind of a different, you know, in a way it's a conversation with God, even though I'm not sure who God is. I'm not sure she knows either. So, and Roger, I hope at some point I'd love to talk to you about Otto Frank and some of the challenges he had in terms of what he was willing to put forward into the world of his daughter's writings, since he held some of them back.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
those challenges for him. I will look forward to seeing those in your body.
Very different piece, actually. I'm seated. I'm seated for Otto Frank for the entirety of the piece. Spoiler alert. But yeah, lots of challenges, lots of interesting challenges for Otto Frank. People who said that the diary was not his daughter's, that he had written it, that it had been fabricated. You know, people claimed that the Holocaust was fabricated as well. There was one man who, you know, went after him for years and years and years, who claimed that you know, he had been ripped off by Otto, you know, when he made the play and then when he made the film adapted from the diary. Lots of difficulties in his latter life. I heard his stepdaughter speak not long ago, Eva Schloss, who was an exact contemporary of Anne. And she said one of the most memorable things that she said in a great address was that she had told Otto, hey, Otto, you're focused too much on the dead. You're neglecting the living. Because he had grandchildren, right? And she felt that there was too much attention being paid to those who had perished. So, lots of interesting things there. Yeah.
Roger's in Los Angeles. Susan's in New York City and Manhattan. Let's go to Anarchy in the UK. Might be her new nickname. Lila, what you got for us, Lila? You're muted, Lila. Muted. It could be Brexit. I don't know.
No, you have to get your, Lila. We can't hear you.
Can't hear you, Lila.
Is your mute on?
She's cursing right now, so it's good we can't hear her. Let me see if I can unmute you as the, hold on. You should be good. No, you're still, you're not muted. You're not muted. I can see on the Zoom you're not muted, but I can't hear you for some other, is your microphone, is there an issue with your microphone? If you have something you want me to ask for you, if you can't make this work, either just start yelling to see if it works or type it in the chat and I'll ask it for you. My friend Steven pointed out that Susan Stein actually does become Etty in that performance. And I know I've said that, and I know friends of hers have said that. So she's being overly modest, as she usually is. Okay, here's the chat. Let's see what she has to say. Come back to me in a second. I want to talk about Weidman. Okay, well, figure it out, man. This is an important topic. She's written some very good stuff that I've read about John's work. She's written about The Roots, that's a band I like a lot. I feel like I can hear you. Are you there? You were almost there, I think.
Well, maybe she can just write out the
type a question in the chat.
Write out the question in the chat, and we'll get to it.
Okay. I was so afraid we'd run out of time.
One quick one.
We got there, other folks. Oh, Lou, you got something?
Yeah, one quick question. Brother man, where did you first get your idea that you wanted to do that like that? I mean, was that something, from back in the day, or something you and Spike Lee come up with in between y'all kicking it, or where did you come up with the idea to actually do your play or your performance?
Well, Father's Day, 2012, I opened up my computer and I saw that Rodney King had died. He drowned in his backyard swimming pool. And I felt horrible, as if I had known him, like he was a brother of mine, a true brother. And I wanted to know why I felt that way. Why did I feel that I had lost someone that I knew? Why did I feel like that? So by the time August came around, I was on stage trying to work it out. And the first thing that I knew I wanted to do, I had to do that Willie D rap, where he says F Rodney King, because that's the other side of it. Willie D saw Rodney King on TV and said, nah, this is not good. This is bogus. This man is on TV crying for cops, for security guards. So I knew I needed to have that perspective. But I knew also that I needed to have the perspective of Rodney doing that great speech, Can we all get along? Which I think is one of the great American speeches. But after he delivered it live on CNN, they never showed the whole speech ever again. They just cut it, they truncated it. They used it as a punchline for jokes. And so I knew that we needed to hear that in its entirety. So those became like the bookends of the performance. And then inside, I just started asking Rodney questions. That's why you hear the name Rodney so many times throughout the piece. And I knew obviously that he couldn't answer those questions, so there's a lot of silence there. And there's another thing that I did in that I took Roger out of the equation. I never allowed myself to use the word I, the personal pronoun I, in reference to Roger, because I didn't want me to be in the mix. I wanted it to be a kind of generic narrator who was asking Rodney all of these questions. So, and I knew I wanted it to be simple. Just a little piece of light, a microphone, and nothing else. No big costume changes, no projections, nothing of that nature. A very simple sound design, which was very simple for the film, a little more complex in the stage play. But it seemed to make sense to put Rodney in that little rectangle because that's the way that we saw him. We saw him on that screen. You know, we fast forwarded him, rewind, freeze frame. He's in that. He's in that little rectangle, like we're in the rectangle right now. And then when I got together with Spike, Spike came to see the play, and we said, "Yeah, we got to do this." And you know, I had an opportunity to perform the play outside as part of a performance series in New York City, a free performance series. And we went to that spot, and Spike.
My sound here. Can you hear me? Yeah.
I can hear you now. So that's how that developed, Lou. Always trying to make it as simple as possible, but within that simplicity, a lot of complex ideas and a lot of different people. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, London. Thank you, Lou.
I think I've resolved it. You can hear me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my name's Lila. I'm based in London, and basically I have a great interest in John Edgar Wideman's work. And through Norm's introduction, I was able to interview him in person last year. And he's encouraging me as well. So, you know, it's feeling like, you know, it's developing as, you know, a great kind of working relationship. But the aim, you know, and what I'd love to be achieving eventually is to create a film based on John's life and work. And, you know, Norm and I have talked about this a lot, with essentially like a two-pronged aim. One is to, you know, get John's work better known in Pittsburgh and in Homewood, you know, because Homewood has this whole literary life in John's work. And also just to underscore his work and his reputation globally. And I've written something like a screenplay, still needs work, still rough around the edges, but you know, I'm always open to help from Stephen's helped me with this as well, which I'm grateful for. We applied for funding from the National Endowment for Humanities, and we didn't get it, sadly. So it's come to a point in the road where, you know, it's just looking for opportunities, looking for funding opportunities, and also thinking outside of the box type of opportunities. You know, John's going to be 80 next year, and you know, it's, you know, I want to celebrate his work, and I want more than celebrating his work, I just want everyone to know his work better, you know, and to have him being able to contribute to an offering which could underscore what he has done for African American culture, what he's done for literature. You know, he's one of the great American authors. There's no discussion about that. And yet, you know, so little known apart from in certain circles, you know. So you know, I just wanted to put that out there because this seems like a group of people who would be interested. And one of them shares a surname.
What he's done for Pittsburgh as well. Don't forget that. I know you might forget that in London, but what he's done for Pittsburgh.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, this, Weidman scholars say, you know, that the Homewood that he's written has the, you know, the literary equivalent and the weight of Faulkner's, and I never know how you pronounce it. The Patata County, I don't know. But William Faulkner created this mythological place, you know, and that goes down in literary history. And Homewood has the same kind of quality in John's work. But, you know, as far as I can ascertain, there's not a lot of knowledge about that in Homewood itself or in Pittsburgh itself. And, you know, the work that I want to do is to grow that awareness in Pittsburgh and globally. But I certainly can't do it alone. So,
Layla, could I, if I may ask you a question, and I know people don't like to talk about their work before it's really done, but there's so much to do with a film or screenplay about John, including his, well, you said you've interviewed him, for example.
yes.
So to talk to him, because he's here,
Yeah.
and there is all the elements that are the complexities of his work, the work itself, Homewood, as Norm puts out, and also his career as a basketball player, you know, his life story.
Yes.
And weaving all, you know, having worked with August Wilson, trying to weave in the words and the life and the place, it's very complex, and I'm just curious.
A lot. Yeah, it's a lot to try to do in one film.
Right.
And I'm not trained as a screenwriter necessarily. I'm having a stab at this, and I'm all for collaboration. You know, I'm an academic writer essentially. I'm all for collaboration. I'm all for you know, getting help and giving help in whatever channels are available. But yeah, you know, I absolutely recognize that covering, you know, the life and work of someone who's lived for nearly 80 years and has written 23 books, you know, and not in substantial works. Every book of his has this tremendous richness. That, you know, maybe it's too much to aim to put it into just one film, you know. But until you know, until I'm able to reach into more resources to actually get this work done, it's all just ideas, sadly, you know. So
well, you mentioned Faulkner, and there also is a Faulknerian quality to a lot of his writing,
yes,
which makes it even more complicated in terms of narratives. There's so much internal writing and monologue, but that's a conversation for another day. But
as usual, my very good friend Stephen has taken us to a conversation for another day when we're having this day. Thank you, Stephen. But seriously, folks,
always happy to help, Norm. I know you appreciate my contribution.
I appreciate you, especially after 2 glasses of wine. So the connection between theater and literature here is kind of what we're getting at, and I got to point this out for the connections to the whole thing. We started the Elsinore Bennu think tank for restorative justice at SCI Pittsburgh, which is a prison from the 1800s. It's shut down now, and part of my motivation for bringing it in there with the guys who I'd met, was I was coming on the other side, the better side of a very severe depression, and I was so into Hamlet, or maybe I was into Hamlet and that's what got me depressed. I don't know, but I was very much identifying with Hamlet, and that's where the Elsinore in Elsinore Bennu comes from. The Bennu, as you might know, is an Egyptian precursor to the phoenix, right? So our friend Malachi from the think tank came up with that, and you made me think of that when you were doing the weighing the heart piece in Rodney King, and on the scales of justice, like they do in the in the underworld and in Egyptian mythology. And you can comment on that, but before you do, in 2014, when I met Farouk, I about lost my mind that this was John Edgar Wideman's brother, and I'm sitting with him. I had no intentions to ever meet John, but when I first met him, he came to Pittsburgh and spoke, and we've been running since. But when we had that symposium, I made a point to say, this is a wonderful night. I'll send you a video of the thing. It's so great to have John here. This, when the Rodney King thing was happening, that's when I was reading Brothers and Keepers, for the first time at Pitt. But my friend Malachi, who will never get out of prison, realistically, he's certainly the best person I probably know. My friend Sean, who might get out of prison. My friend Fly, who could get out of prison. My friend Oscar, who's young enough that we're hopeful, man. They can't be here tonight. I don't know what time it is in England. It's night in England. That was for Lala. They can't be here. And as good as it is, the reason we're here and the reason we're concerned about this art and everything we're trying to do as a group is in response to a really terrible thing, right? At the time I was talking about just about prison, and now we're talking about so much more, right? Prison is just one symptom of the so much more. And I also say someone who is here and who's always here is our friend Khalifa, who died in prison. In our book, we don't have any real good pictures of Khalifa because he was in prison basically his whole life. And they made this picture for the book of him out of words. So it's always important that we honor the ancestor, our friend Khalifa. And I'll get your address and I'll send you a copy of the book. It's got Farouk's writing in there, and I promise you there is a piece in there that's on par with anything John ever wrote. And I'll say that to John.
Sitting here. That's why Lou said that's why he wanted to come to this.
I just got to say, since we're talking about my brother and me, how much I appreciate that. And, yeah, Roger, you might enjoy that piece. It's a piece I can't even read anymore without crying. How I ever got it all out is amazing to me. But I wanted to tell Camilla that if she's thinking about, if she has anything that she would like me to look at, send it to me.
Thank you. I'd love to. Yeah.
And I would, be glad to read it and say what I think of it, or, if we could make some kind of long distance, we could email each other about it. So, yeah.
I think I've got your email through Norm, so I'll send you.
And I don't understand how John's going to be turning 80 when you're his younger brother and you're at least 150. So
he gets me with that knife all the time.
That goes back to our friend Khalifa. It was an ongoing argument which one of them was older, because they were down 40 some years together, and so I had to jump in it. And when someone came in with the interest in gangs, I said, well, these two were with Frank and Jesse James, so they can tell you anything you want to know about gangs. So I don't want to keep Roger any longer than we have. I'll keep you here. Like I invited Roger to move to Pittsburgh and help me and Colleen and Tiffany and the gang change policing. He deferred, but he said, let's talk about what we can do. And I like that. So, I mean, I have another class in 14 minutes, but 24 minutes, but we can hang out, or if Roger wants to go.
Let me say this before Roger goes about the police inside out, about Tiffany and Colleen. When we started that, I lost a few friends because guys were really upset about us, having class with the police. But I'll tell you what, I might have lost a few friends, but as far as Tiffany and Colleen are concerned, I gained 2 very good friends and a few others, that came in as police officers. And you know, we keep talking about how it's all connected. Well, as much as, you know, sometimes it gives me a bitter taste because people that have, you know, the police have been, you know, the idea of police in America started off as slave catchers. And, you know, we've not had a good relationship for all these hundreds of years. But the true fact is that it is all connected, and that we're just, as Tiffany, I think, was trying to put it, we're all just human beings. And what happens when you have these police inside out training, as we call it, you find that out. I mean, the realization, you know, everyone knows it and everyone will say it. Of course, we're all human beings. But how me and Roger talked, and, you know, I got the best friend, Bootsy. He has cousins, Bootsy. Looks like Bootsy to me. All the connections, those connections are with everybody you meet. You know, when it's all connected, it means that it really is all connected. And so, you know, when we're able to make those human connections, to actually take classes with people. Think back over all the years everyone went to school, and, you know, grade school and high school and college and baby beyond. Most of the people that you met, you wound up liking, even if you didn't like them at the time. But you have fond memories of them. Even the ones that you thought might have been jerks in high school. You see them later on, and you say, "Hey, Bill, man, what's up, man?" And, you know, you feel some kind of way about seeing them again. So, you know, it is all connected. And doing Police Inside Out really shows that. And I just wanted to say that, you know, for everyone, and especially for Colleen and Tiffany, because, you know, they know, you know, how I feel about it.
Yeah. If I could just segue and just point out, while it's true that all of these things are connected, the divide is the structure. And so we can love across being Confederates and Union members because we family. But we got to get rid of the structure that's in the way. And that's what at least my focus is. And I know that's what we're talking about. These divides, these are tools. And they're tools that are being used by the plutocrats for all practical purposes. I'll say it that way for sake of a better word. What we got to do is find out how do we unpack it, because half of the police, if you know the history of the police, you know that they would take the Italians to police the Irish neighborhood. They would take the Jews to police the black neighborhood. They would use these as tools, and it's based on the structure. And so this is what we have to keep in mind when we start talking about reaching across the divide. How do we reach across the divide and successfully transform the structure such that it includes us all and all of us benefit from these personal relationships?
I'd add to that and point out that, Roger, you played a cop whose father was killed in line of duty and get on the bus, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yusuf, thank you so much for saying all of that, because I think that's the work that needs to be done. Like, we made the first step, or we're working on making some of the first steps with recognizing humanity, but we can't pretend it's going to be that easy. There's hundreds of years of history that needs to be unpackaged and figured out. Thank you.
And I want to point out that real quick, Colleen and Tiffany and a lot of other cops are my friends, and I know they're suffering right now, and I know that Black people are suffering right now, and I'm neither, but because I got all these people in my life, I'm suffering right now. Because of American, I'm suffering right now. Colleen, please go ahead.
No, I just wanted to let everyone know while we're here on this forum, just at least in the circle that Tiffany and I might be in the smaller microcosm of it, we've been asking for changes in policing for a long time, and nobody was listening to us. People were coming in and telling us how we should do things, and we were trying to explain to them, yeah, we want that too, but we don't have the resources at our fingertips to do that, and nobody's listening to what we need. So now, finally, they actually are listening. So with all of this turmoil, things that are going on, it finally caught attention, and it's happening. And Tiffany and I both are going to be operating out of the same office, working on pre-arrest things so that people aren't having things on their record, working, all the way down sequential intercept things, trying to basically remodel how we do things. It's a substantial work needs to be done, like Tiffany said, with history, with the future, with right now. There's so much that we want to do, and we're going to do it. And that's, I reached out to Norm too, to make sure we have the community too. It's not, we are the community, and the community is us, and we've got to work together and figure out what satisfies everyone's needs, not just what we see as right and not just what other people tell us we should be doing. So it's working, and I'm really hoping that we have a really strong restorative tenant to what Pittsburgh, and then hopefully Allegheny County picks up, and then hopefully it goes across the whole country at some point, so that we don't see the inequalities that we've been seeing in policing. That was my little plug.
Thank you. Thank you. You might be surprised to know, Roger, but Western Pennsylvania is a pretty backwards place, but you might know that. But there's some people in the Pittsburgh Police Department trying to do some amazingly progressive work, and there's no appreciation for. I shouldn't say no, but it seems like there's just not enough appreciation for it. And our friend, my wife stopped me from telling this joke earlier, but it's true. Tiffany got it in the chat. Our friend Tim. He's a great guy. I absolutely love him. And I asked him to come to this, and he said, I can't, I'm quarantined because of the contacts. And I'm like, it's on Zoom, Tim. It's not a computer virus. So he didn't want to take the chance with our health, I guess. He knows how vulnerable Farouk is.
Well, he doesn't know how to work Zoom, so I can't wait to tell him, Farouk, I'm going to make fun of him and tell him Farouk is so much more than you. So I actually talked to him a couple of times during this, so I'm glad you recorded it. I'll definitely have, if you're able.
Excellent. I wish he could have been here.
Yeah, and tell him I'm real slow, but quicker than him. And one last thing I need to say. What we do with the stuff we're trying to do in Homewood, we're trying to do some other things. I mentioned how we do the high rises. We even go to what we call between us Needle Park, I told you about, and try to get, the people's kids there some food. And we go to a place called Kaylee Irvis, who is a famous Pennsylvania politician. High rise is named after him. My mother and my father, those are the last two places that they lived. And that's one of the reasons that I pushed to go to those places. So, the stories of Homewood that everyone was talking about, they're still going on. The story has changed, but it has changed with the same history of America. And so there's a lot more to be said. And, I am negligent in writing it all down, but I just have to try harder. And I'm just glad to know that everyone was talking about those connections, and maybe Camilla, we could do better.
Maybe there's a next generation of Homewood writers, Homewood chroniclers.
Oh, there is. There definitely is.
I don't want to, before we run out of time, we still have time left, but I just want to say this. No theatrical piece has affected. Colin, did you just drink out of a baby bottle? Anyway, no, kind of killed him.
No, but I do have pee on my lap from the potty training job.
Good for
I'll
you.
take how long.
So, and this is very specific to me. it's not a good focus group, but given who I am and what I do, no theatrical piece has affected me the way Rodney King has. And I think I'd mentioned that we were very close with Leon Ford. He couldn't be here today because he just landed in Miami and he's going to party on a yacht. But he said there's only 8 people there, and it's so it'll be social distance. I asked him if he needed me to run out and get him some suntan lotion and a special spoon for caviar or whatever, however it works. And so Leon really loves a Huey P. Newton story, and I think part of it is because you're seated that whole time, and he's seated, right? And there's such an energy to that one. And I want to say that Farouk became my hero because I met him and all these people that we work with here. John, I didn't know, and I got to meet. They said, "Don't meet your hero." It was cool. You're one of my heroes for the Rodney King piece, and thank you so much for being here. And it is. I hope you're willing to do more with us as the cops and these guys that like. Now you got who's that next to you in that car, Farouk?
This is Yusuf Rabi. If anyone knows what a Rabi is, this is Kamal.
Kamal.
So you had him in there. You're probably looking at over 150 years that you talked to in prison on this. And that's for real. In terms of years they were down, it's probably over 150 years.
Definitely over. Close to 200.
Just the segue here, not to toot anybody's horn and nothing like that there. But one of them gentlemen, I'm sure, have participated in details with Huey P. Newton.
So there you go, Roger. You're talking to a.
Yeah, when I saw him do Huey P, I was like, man, this guy must have been around Huey for a long time, because it was like Huey was in the chair. So I'll say that.
Thank you for that.
Okay,
but
yes.
I never met Huey. I never saw him in person.
Whoa.
I was very fortunate in that I met his widow and his brother and his sister and David Hilliard as well. And I was able to dive into the Huey archives for about a year before I really felt any kind of comfort zone getting out on stage and actually playing him. And when I started doing that, it was only about 5 years after he had been killed. So the memory of Huey was still very fresh in people's minds, especially in the Bay Area, which is where I kicked it off.
I didn't see that one coming. That's great. Wow, that's great.
I'm gonna have to break. I really appreciated this, and my learning curve is, I'm a little slow. You just have to bear with me just a little bit.
He's stuck with that. Don't buy it.
I heard you. Okay.
We'll all be in touch.
I hope so. I hope with John, this is the start that we can get out there and save some lives, whether it's through writing or theater or being a police officer or being out in Homewood right now when you're 400 years old between the three of them, delivering food to people. I've lifted those boxes with them. And those boxes are heavy, and they give them to the people. Lou might keep a couple for himself. I don't know. He's in the back.
Actually, your son lifted the boxes.
My son's lifted the boxes. I stood there.
Yeah.
You guys keep me straight. I don't know what else to tell you. Anyone else?
That's why you brought him. Right.
Come on, I didn't hear you.
I said that's why you brought him, to do the heavy lifting. You know what, Norm?
What?
Norm.
Yeah.
The pieces that he's already done and the ideas and thoughts that we have, I'm thinking that we will be able to make something happen, man, that to put something out in the atmosphere. You know what I'm saying? That's
I hear you.
That's what we need. So, brother, man, we appreciate meeting you, and there ain't no doubt that that we're connected and hooked up. Just good people being about it, man. So thank you, Norm, and everybody else, man.
Thank
And
you.
Roger, thank you for this time with our team, right? This is a team here, and we all have functions. I do this part of it. Everyone does something. Thank you so much. This has been amazing.
All right. I agree. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Take
All
care,
right.
everyone.
All right. Peace.
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 Hey, that's the saying, man.